Hello, Lisa here. Welcome to Walking the Self-Worth Path, a series where I share with you my favorite tarot and witchy tools, techniques, and rituals to support your journey to an empowered life. There comes a point in the self-worth path journey when you recognize that there are things about yourself that you would like to change. And in the previous steps, we've really uncovered how we begin to sort of unpack that, how we can lovingly bring sides of ourselves or parts of ourselves into the light, how we can bring some awareness to the things about ourselves that maybe we're not so fond of, things that we'd maybe like to do differently or stop doing at all. I like pulling magic in to support these practices, to support the concept of, or to support my work trying to change the things about myself that I'm not as fond of. And in that way, I've really leaned into the kinds of practices that will help me do the things that I know will be effective. And what I've learned is really effective when we're trying to change something about ourselves is it's way easier to replace a maybe not so helpful habit of thinking or behavior with a helpful habit than it is to try to just eliminate the unhelpful or the unhealthy habit or coping mechanism. If I try to just simply stop doing a thing, I find that I'm very unsuccessful. But if I'm like, every time I notice myself doing the thing, I'm going to do this other thing instead that is healthy and good for me and helpful and keeps me on track, that works. That works because it's an active process instead of a passive one. We're not just trying to stop doing a thing. And this is what I talk about in great depth in the book is in my book, The Self-Worth Path. No, but in all seriousness, one of the things that I spend a great deal of time exploring, at least that I feel like deserves a great deal of time exploring, is the concept of trying to change a habit and how a habit exists because we've built a trench of doing the same thing again and again and again. It's kind of like if you walk the same path back and forth 100 times, you're going to dig a groove. Now walk that same path 1,000 times, a million times. It's easier to stay in the groove at that point than to do something new. So every time you try to stop doing that, you just end up falling back into that same exact habit, into that same exact pattern, into that same groove. And so what I found to be effective is instead of trying to just stop walking in the groove that I've so well worn for myself, is to dig a new groove. And the way you dig a new groove is every time you find yourself doing that old unhelpful thing that's not helpful anymore, you start to do a new thing instead. So you start to, it's like adding a positive habit instead of just trying to eliminate a negative habit. Does that make sense? So I hope that this particular working that I'm going to share with you will be helpful for you for that. It's certainly been helpful for me. Essentially what a habit transformer is, which is the point of this whole video. Essentially a habit transformer is an item that you charge with your intention, that you consciously resolve that you are going to touch, handle, acknowledge, look at, etc. anytime you catch yourself doing a specific negative pattern of behavior. I like to have different habit transformers for different habits. I think that when I try to lump too many of them together into one habit transformer, it becomes a little less effective. It becomes a little too washed down and generic. But at the same time, I also think it's helpful when you're doing this kind of work to not try to inundate yourself with trying to change too many things all at the same time. So in a way, it's helpful to sort of focus your habit transformer into one specific behavior or type of behavior you're trying to change. So essentially how it works is that you have any kind of an object, something small. It can be something like a stone. Like here I have a aura-coated rose quartz palm stone. It could be this, and my goal could be to carry this with me on my person, to always have it in a pocket. And I think it's important if you're going to choose something like this, that you know whether or not you're going to regularly have a pocket to put it in. Sometimes it's easy to create something like this and then go and you're wearing an outfit and it doesn't fit, or you don't have a pocket. Maybe this is more of a like girl clothes problem than otherwise, because our clothes are often lacking in pockets. But I hesitate to use things like this for that reason, because I find it's too easy to leave it at home, to not reach for it, to not use it. So I tend to go for wearables, which I'll talk more about in a moment when I flip us around and show you how to do all this. But essentially, let me just use this for the sake of the example. So you take an item like this, you think about the habit you want to change. Maybe it's you have a habit of being self-critical, like you have a tendency to put yourself down, to talk negatively to yourself or about yourself to other people. So maybe that's the habit you want to change. So you recognize that this isn't helpful, that it's not healthy for you. So you go, okay, I'm going to change that habit. So what am I going to do instead? Well, every time I catch myself saying something negative about myself, I'm going to stop, take a deep breath, and say something positive about myself instead, to find something nice to say about myself. Or maybe it's easier and more accessible to, instead of trying to say something nice about yourself in those moments, to instead pause and think about something you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be an exact opposite of the behavior you're doing. It can be something else entirely that you just want to build a positive habit of doing. So in this way, every time you start to catch yourself speaking negatively about yourself, you can take your habit transformer, which you have charged with this intention. You can take this and you can pull it out of your pocket and you can hold it and you can remind yourself to think of something you're grateful for or say something positive about yourself. And you repeat this and you start to build this new habit. And that is a way that I have found to be incredibly effective for any kind of negative or unhealthy unhealthy? Yeah, we'll go with unhealthy. Unhelpful or unhealthy. I totally merged those two words. But you could take any behavior that is not helpful to you, that is not healthy for you that you've identified, and you can consciously change it by building a new positive habit instead. And again, remember, the thing you're replacing it with doesn't have to be an exact correlation to what it is you're doing. What if you want to exercise more? So every time you catch yourself saying something negative about yourself, you resolve to walk around the block once. That may not be realistic, but I'm just pointing out that you can marry any unhelpful habit that you want to rid yourself of with any helpful or healthy habit that you want to build. And the point is you connect the two so that every time you catch yourself doing this thing over here, you do this positive good thing instead. And so you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, although I hate that analogy, I just realized as I say it. You can help yourself to stop doing this thing you want to stop doing, but you can also build something really supportive and healthy to do instead. And so you strengthen this habit and weaken this habit at the same time. And I just think that is the most powerful combination of things to really effectively enact personal transformation, to really put into practice what it is you want to do differently in your life. So I'm very passionate about this because it's very, very, very helpful and it's effective. And in my own experience, when you're trying to reprogram yourself or deprogram yourself from decades or years or however long of unhealthy conditioning, of unhealthy patterns, of toxic patterns that you maybe learned from people around you growing up, or trying to sort of deprogram all these like negative ways that you maybe engage with yourself, it's hard to do. It's such an embedded habit, it's hard to do. But as soon as you start replacing it instead of trying to simply eliminate it, it gets 1,000 times easier and it becomes more accessible and it becomes something you can experience some wins with because you've given yourself something to do instead. And it's like this great positive balance where you go from feeling bad about yourself and about this pattern, because that's what happens when we do shadow work and we start to look at our stuff, right? We can feel really bad about ourselves, about the things we uncover, but you kind of battle that by not only improving that and not doing that thing as much, but by actually building something you can be proud of, whether it's walking more or building a gratitude practice or speaking positively about yourself. You can actually, like I said, weaken this and strengthen this at the same time. And I just find it to be powerful and effective and wonderful. And I'm excited to share it with you. And I'm getting repetitive. So I'm just going to flip the camera around so that we can do this working. It's very simple. It's very much on the ultra beginner level of witchiness. So if you are interested in seeing how I create a magical habit transformer to support transformation and changing habits, then stay tuned. We're going to flip around. So a habit transformer can be anything, but I have a tendency to lean into the kinds of things I'm likely to want to keep on my person or reach for or use. So when you're coming up with which item you're going to want to use to become your habit transformer, think about something that isn't going to be inconvenient for you to incorporate into your daily routine in some way. So either a small stone that's easy to slip into a pocket, keeping in mind whether or not you regularly have pockets available, whether it's a pendant you can wear on a cord around your neck, or a coin you can slip into your coin purse in your wallet or something. But you want it to be an object that's going to be easy for you to reach for and easy for you to work with. Now, the first sort of transformer that I ever worked with was this one. And this has sort of created a bit of a preference, or I guess disposition, towards using these stone bracelets as habit transformers. So this is actually something that I do pretty regularly, or that I otherwise charge with a particular intention. But I find bracelets, these stone ones, specifically for me personally, to be really effective as habit transformers because I can really easily slip it on my wrist. It's super handy. I can see it, so it's in my line of sight when I'm working or when I'm doing things throughout the day, and it's easier for me to remember to just pick this up and touch it, work with it, distract myself with it for a moment to refocus my intention. So this is the first one that I ever made. For today's exercise, we're going to do a new one. So I'm going to just pull out the bracelet I've selected to use for today's example. So this is I believe a silk stone bracelet. I think that's what this stone is called. And I actually selected this bracelet a long time ago because there was something about the properties of this stone that I read at the time that said it was something about being really good at helping you to replace bad habits with good habits, which is the entire point of a habit transformer. So I thought it would make a really great like sort of template or base to begin this working through. So I've pulled out a couple of other things to also help boost. So for today's example habit transformer, I'm going to focus on a regular sort of habit transforming practice that I have in my own life, which is about sort of releasing that urge or desire to control outcomes, or to, when I'm feeling insecure, sort of lean into that grippy, holdy sort of pattern, and instead replace that with surrender, with trust, with softening. And so that is what I'm going to be focusing on here, is whenever I catch myself being a little bit grippy or a little bit controlly, this transformer will be there to remind me to soften, surrender, and trust. So that is regular part of my shadow work. It's something that I'm constantly looking at and working on. So that just makes a really good one for me personally. So what I've pulled into this is my herbs. This is the herbal blend that I made for Trust, which is part of the same work for me. And I actually showed myself making some of this blend in an earlier video in our Walking the Self-Worth Path series. So I will link that up in the cards so that you can refer back to it if you'd like to make yourself something similar. But I like having herbs or a salt blend, but usually herbs to do when I'm doing this particular kind of working. A little tiny piece fell out and I'm just going to stick it in the center there. So I'm going to have that handy. I've also selected a crystal to sort of support and boost this working, and also to hold intention and space. And I have brought in my golden healer. I first got this stone when I really, really needed it. And it is a stone that I continue to go back to again and again when I feel like something needs to be alchemized or purified, or when I need that sort of gentle holding hand kind of energy. So this is really a great supportive stone for that. So I'm going to place that right in the center of my bracelet here. So finally, I have pulled in the Reclaim Oracle. This has become a fast favorite in my collection. As I know I've mentioned in previous videos in this series, I think it's actually come out to play in the last couple videos in Walking the Self-Worth Path. But I have actually pulled out consciously already 2 cards for the habit that I want to release and 2 cards for what I want to embrace instead. And I'm going to use these to sort of anchor the whole point of the transformer here. So I might need to move everything up just a little bit. So we're going to do that. Where's my little piece of marigold? Let's move the whole thing up so that we're more sort of center frame. So hopefully everything is visible. So for the thing I want to release, right? I have the card for control. Hello, camera, focus please, thank you. And I also have the card for insecurity, because often controlling behavior comes from that place of insecurity. So I'm going to place these up here because these are the behaviors or the habits or the energy that I want to release, that I want to shed. And what I want to embrace instead, so what the bracelet's energy is to hold for me, is the energy around surrender. So here's the surrender card. And trust. So here is the trust card. So my visual for this is that we're kind of passing this energy through this bracelet. So we're shedding and releasing this energy, and we're embracing and pulling in this energy. And this is just a really beautiful visual for that. So that is how I have this set up right now. Now, before I begin to just sort of focus, meditate, and charge, I'm going to go ahead and place a circle of herbs around, kind of like I would cast a circle. I've done this a few times and I find it to be a really simple and beautiful, also powerful way to sort of create a sacred space or hold an intention around a sacred space. So I'm going to be pretty generous with these, and I'm just going to literally create a circle. Well, a wobbly circle, because I have to go around my candle. I almost said calendar there. So I'm going to just use this to create a bit of a border. going around. And the nice thing about doing this with herbs is that once I'm done, I can scoop these up and I can bury them. I can take care of these. It's really easy cleanup, I guess is the point I'm trying to make here. But I'm not afraid to be generous with this because the whole point is I want the energy of this working to sort of soak in, so to speak, to the bracelet. And so these herbs create a solid circle, a container, you could say. So you can't really see the bottom edge, but I'm just sealing off the bottom edge as well. And I'm going to put just a little sprinkle right over the center. Perfect. So this is now basically ready to go. I'm going to take a moment just to kind of let this energy sit, and then I'm going to take a few deep breaths. And when I'm ready, I'm going to be taking my hands to either side of the working. I think I might do them just out of frame. And from there, just sort of send my energy, meditate for a little while with this working, and just sort of let it soak, let it imbue, and let that bracelet be charged. So I'm going to take a couple deep breaths now, and then I'm going to get started on focus and meditation. And this is where I think the cards are really helpful because I can really focus on those two images at the top and what I'm releasing, and then I can really focus on those two images at the bottom and what I'm embracing, right? So it's really helpful for that. So I am going to take my breaths and get started. And that is basically it. Now you can add more complexity to this working if you want. You could pull in more crystals. You could create a crystal grid. You could leave this out in an altar space or a area of your home that's not likely to be disturbed for a moon cycle. You could do this under the full moon. You can add all of the layers to make this working yours that you would like. But in the end, the goal is to have an item that you can wear or carry or keep with you. And then every time you catch yourself in this place, in the place of the behavior you're trying to transform or the habit you're trying to transform, and this can be a mundane habit. This could be chewing on your nails or, I don't know, like any other kind of habit, smoking, anything like that you want to change. Every time you catch yourself doing the thing you don't want to do anymore, you have a physical reminder that you can then reach and touch. So for me, if I caught myself being really grippy or really controlling, I would actually tend to pull this off and like just work through the beads, just sort of hold it, touch it, work with it, remind myself what this stands for. And often that's all you need. The goal of a habit transformer is to help you be more aware. And when you are aware, to give you something else to help you focus or refocus on the positive behavior. Because the whole point of this is, as I mentioned before, to, rather than just stop doing the thing that you don't want to do anymore, to replace that thing you don't want to do anymore with something else, to give yourself an active replacement for that thing that you'd like to stop or that you'd like to change in some way. So it's kind of like, instead of doing this, I'm going to do this. So when I catch myself being controlling or insecure, instead of doing that, I'm going to remind myself to surrender, to soften, to trust. And this is just to help me do that. So you can customize this in so many ways, and you can change this up in so many ways, but the base principle, the base working is still really essentially the same. And it's there to create a space for you to shift, to transform, to transmute the energy. And that is the point of this. So thank you so much for hanging out with me for another episode of Walking the Self-Worth Path. We are working our way through the stages, and we're nearing the end of this series. Over the next few months, we will be wrapping this series up. So I really encourage you, if you haven't yet, to go back and watch the earlier episodes, because everything builds on the next thing. As you saw today, I reached back into my Herbal Trust Blend. We're building on tools and things we've talked about previously to do each new step. So if you're just new to joining the series, or if you're just catching this video for the first time, I definitely encourage you to check out the playlist, which is going to be in the description box down below, or if for some reason I forget it, it will definitely be right on the channel. If you go to playlists and you find Walking the Self-Worth Path, you'll find the whole list. You can work your way through more sequentially. And this is a series that, for those of you who have picked up a copy of my book, Walking the Self-Worth Path, or just The Self-Worth Path is the book, but if you have picked up a copy of my book, The Self-Worth Path, these practices, these tools, these techniques are meant to support you in that work. So you can totally do these videos or do these practices alongside working with the actual book, if that is more your speed. As always, I will have a link to the book as well in the description box, so you can check that out if you want. I believe at the time I'm recording this, this book is still available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read the book as part of your Kindle Unlimited subscription. Otherwise, you can download it, or you can purchase a paperback copy. All of that is awesome. I am kind of looking into possibly putting out a hardback copy of this in the future. If that is something that you're interested in, definitely let me know. I've certainly enjoyed the paperback, but I know different people have different preferences. So let me know in the comments. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me. Please do be sure and like this video if you enjoyed it or you found value in it. Subscribe if you're new here. Don't forget to click the bell so you're notified of my future videos. Thank you so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.